Hello, this is GunFunZS. You may know me from such quality um, YouTube videos as a cheapskate's guide to lead hardness testers showing you how to use pencils to test lead hardness. And if you know me from around the internet, you also know that I do a lot of bullet casting. I also very much appreciate the lead hardness tester, but it is not an easy tool to use. And I am still a cheapskate, but I really appreciate the improvement that's been made by James, known as Loads of Bacon on the Reloaders Network. I've been affiliated with him since the inception of that project. It's been so helpful, and he gave me one of his hardness testers to beta test and give any suggestions on design improvements, and really there wasn't a lot to improve. He nailed it right out of the park. Um, if you'd asked me whether I needed to buy this tool, I would have said no. Having used it, oh man, does it make a frustrating task easier. And just to show you how frustrating the task was, I'll show you my previous version of an improvement that I was going to upload as a YouTube video, but I just wasn't happy with how it worked. So this for me is Gen 1, the pencils. I still actually use them sometimes. They're very handy for taking with you to the scrapyard if there's a big pile of lead and you'd like to get the good stuff. I wouldn't try to take a hardness tester to the scrapyard. They're also good just for double checking to make sure known quantity stuff appears to be in the range without doing the full work. But they have some limitations. These don't go up as hard as I need, and there's also gaps between several of the hardness tiers of the pencils. And there's a fair amount of subjectivity based on how you use it. If you're consistent with your methods, you can get consistent results relative to yourself, but it isn't accurate compared to somebody else. The Lee hardness tester, I'm not sure what it costs now, but at least when I was getting it, it was around $40. Gives you another level. It gives you a broader range going up into the around 40 BHN range of testing capability, and it gives you more precision. However, with this little pen microscope thing, with this little pen microscope, you have a difficult task because you're measuring in the fractions of the thousandths per inch. Try to get that in better focus. And that means fractions of thousandths per inch of movement of you is a huge blurry movement in the scope. And I'm sure all of you shooters who've tried to do precision long range with the tiny scopes that people had in the 80s or tried to use a BB gun scope know exactly what I'm talking about. And so it's possible to get good readings, but I would always be fighting, trying to get the bullet held in the right orientation that I could look at it, get enough light on it, get my focal distance right, and my orientation side to side and up and down on my X and Y axis. So Z, X, Y, all of those were difficult in addition to the light and my own head position. And so I could get a reading, but I wouldn't really trust my reading because I was getting it in the middle of my wobble. And so, really, before I was ever confident with any number, I would spend 10 or 15 minutes redoing the same measurement several times. I learned some tricks like sharpening into the divots. I'm trying to make this focus and it just doesn't want to. But maybe that's it. Oh, there we go. So that makes them pop up easier, so it's easier to see the edges of the holes. So this has just a little bit of Sharpie in there. And that helped. And then I went and made a thing that I could stick in my vise that I could aim a lamp at, that I could set a bullet in. That seems pretty simple and pretty crude, and I'd seen other people do it. And That's my basic microscope setup. Well, you'd think it is simple, but I spent a ton of time tuning where that groove was with a file back and forth and could never seem to make it be in the right place for every bullet. Plus, it was still ergonomically awkward to get myself in the right place. That was still better than freehanding it in space, and I made this to make a YouTube video on it. I even put the card on there just to show it to other people who use the Reloaders Network. And then James made his improvement, which is this. You may have seen a couple other people upload this to YouTube. So you take the shell holder and you put it in there. You put your microscope tube in here and lock it down. And it should be oriented that way. And then this allows you to run it up and down just like any conventional microscope. And then at my suggestion, he made this light stand. And you basically bring it down to contact and then pull it just up and you'll be somewhere in there. Now I thought this would still be difficult because moving this precisely is difficult to do. But with the grippy feet and using counterposed hand pressure, I can very easily see what I need to see. So right there, that's how long it took me to get a very solid, stable reading on that. That would have taken me 5 or 6 or 10 minutes of frustration, and I just did it roughly set up on the camera in about 15 seconds of pushing that around. This is an immensely helpful tool, and he's done several iterations of improvement. This didn't used to have the rubber feet. It was fine without it. It's great with them. The light is just right. I really can't think of anything to improve this. So, bottom line is, I would say if you can afford this and you cast bullets a lot, especially if you do hollow points or rifle bullets where fine differences in hardness really matter, then this tool is incredibly useful to you. There are other tools that have been out there, and none of them really solve all of the difficulties well. There was I believe, Green Mountain hardness tester. Still had all the same problems of the Lee tester, although it covered a broader range and was possibly a more precise instrument. But it wasn't precise in the range where we needed it to be. The Lee tester was affordable and is available, but it's difficult to use because you're just wobbly. This solves it. So if you're a reloader and you're still in it to save money, not fighting getting a load to shoot well because of uncontrolled variables does save money in the long run. Like, you can definitely burn through a can of powder trying to find the sweet spot for your load, and just knowing, oh, my lead hardness isn't what it's supposed to be, is a good way to solve that. And if you combine this with Richard Lee's method of deriving pressure related to the hardness of your bullet before you even start to work up a load, you can hit your target load almost on the first try. I frequently get good results on my first range trip using his his method, and in the long run that becomes a big money saver. This is a quality control step that can let you know that your ammo is continuing to be what you think it is after you've worked up a load. When you're working up a new load, you can know what your desired performance is, find some load data that's appropriate to that, take the pressure from the load data and make your bullet the appropriate hardness, or go the other way around and say, I have a bullet of a known hardness, therefore I know what pressure I need to do, and adjust your load data to meet that pressure. Work up a small ladder around that little bracket, and you will get a good result, basically your first try. That's what a setup like this suddenly makes easy. And if you're like me, where getting out to the range is an expense and consumables are an expense, spending a little bit on the tooling in order to not be fighting a bunch of trial and error really does actually save money. I think there's a lot of reloading tools that don't give you a measurable benefit that end up negating the utility of reloading. This is not one of them. Anyway, that's my take on this. If you're at all interested in this and you're wondering whether it's a good product, it absolutely is. If you're extremely poor and or on a very tight budget and bottom line is the only thing that matters to you in reloading, don't get this right away. Don't let this hold you back from starting bullet casting. But once you start to work on it, I would put this in your budget eventually because it will save you a lot of trouble and it will in the long term save you money. Have a good day.